when you hold up the coin image next to an image of the shroud, you see some phenomenal similarities, which could not be coincidental.
Gracious gang, welcome to the Gracious Guest Show. I'm your humble host, Mike Creavey. So happy that you have come to this particular moment in your day, and you are now entering into some deeper consideration about the intersection of faith and culture, in this case history, some mystery. This is all really exciting stuff as we dig back into the ever-popular topic of the Shroud of Turin. But before we do that, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do that. Please share this far and wide. Give the video a little thumbs up there if you could like it. That really helps get the content out there to folks. I'm delighted to welcome back to the show today a friend of the show, Mr. Justin Robinson. Justin's been on before. We had this transatlantic conversation that we always manage to work out, and it's always a real awesome honor, and it's very exciting. I'm a big fan of history myself, so is Justin, and he's been on before to talk about some of the theories surrounding, for example, could the Shroud of Turin actually be the real Holy Grail? Which is a cool episode. You want to check out some of his thoughts on that if you want to check the link out below to that earlier interview with Justin. He's also been on the show before to discuss the topic we're really digging into more in detail today, namely the potential for evidence on coins, especially Byzantine, or as he says, Byzantine, right? The more British pronunciation. Coins from centuries before the Shroud, those who are skeptical of the Shroud's authenticity, claiming that it's just a medieval kind of hoax or phenomenon. There seems to be some evidence on coins preceding that medieval date by several centuries, which shouldn't make sense, right? If the Shroud is just a 12th or 13th century hoax of some kind, there shouldn't be strong evidence of it prior to that time. And then that's a big issue that comes up a lot in these discussions. We see certain evidence that folks share to try to address that. So Justin's going to dig into that a little bit more. Let me share his background here. Justin is a historian and author working within the coin industry, a fellow of the Royal Numismatic Society, and a member of the British Numismatic Society. Justin is also a regular contributor to Coin News, the UK's biggest selling coin magazine. He loves working in the numismatics industry, where he gets to share his passion for history to tell the stories that bring the past to life. And I love this quote from him. He says, quote, "A coin without a story is just a piece of metal, but a coin with a story becomes history in your hands." That sounds pretty cool. So Justin is also on the management team of the British Society for the Turin Shroud, friends of this program, and he's recently helped to develop content for their new website, shroudofturin.uk. Make sure you check out that link below, which seeks to provide a valuable online resource for people who wish to learn more about this astonishing historical artifact. So I'm going to jump right into the interview with Justin. Apologies, we ran into some technological issues here or there, so there's some video and some audio, like it's a little glitchy at a few places, but just appreciate your patience with that, and the conversation was really awesome. So let's go ahead and jump into my third conversation about the Shroud of Turin with Justin Robinson. Check it out. Justin Robinson, we got you back on the Gracious Guest Show across the pond, as they say. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
I said I was changing my watch earlier because I have, I'm glad to say, so many kind of regular friends, it seems, from the British Turin Shroud Society on here. I should know what time it is in England by now, so that's good. Yeah. So you've been on the program before. We talked about a couple things, some of the coin research you've done specifically as it relates to the Shroud. We can get into that a little bit more in this episode as well. And then I think we talked a little bit a while back about some of the, the theories about the is the Shroud of Turin actually the Holy Grail, right? The vessel that held the blood of Jesus, kind of thing. So there's a couple episodes people can check out, and I'll have those linked below if they want to do that. But for those who haven't heard of you before or seen the episodes before, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can get into what's going on these days in your research.
Sure. Well, I'm a historian. I work for the coin in the coin industry. I work for a company called Samler Huset, who are one of the largest coin collecting companies in Europe. And I've been very fortunate. I've also had a background in an interest in the shroud that goes back several decades. I can remember when I was a very small boy, I asked my mother. She was reading a book, and there was a strange photograph of a bearded man on the cover, and I asked her all about it. And she started telling me this incredible story. And it was Ian Wilson's book on the shroud, and it was the very first grown-up book I ever read. And I was absolutely hooked from about 10 years old, and fascinated by it. I mean, it got me interested in history, and it sparked this sort of lifelong interest that I've got. And I was very fortunate. I have been very fortunate in my career. I once gave a talk to a group of salespeople within my company who were selling a Byzantine gold solidus that had the face of Christ on it. And I was able to tell them a little bit about the story of this, of how this image came to be on the coin, and some of my theories regarding the shroud and the image of Edessa. And that sort of sparked an interest. And unfortunately, gold coins, as they still are, sadly, above my pay grade, I started looking for a Byzantine follis, which was a bronze follis, which was struck a couple of centuries later. They started out in 969 AD. And I started looking for one of those. It was a mass-produced coin. It would have circulated throughout the Byzantine Empire, would have been struck in Constantinople. And in 969 AD, Emperor John I Zimisces decreed that rather than putting an image of the emperor on the coin, it should have the face of Christ. And I think there was a very strong and very good reason for that. It was because 20 years earlier, they had just taken possession of the most holy relic in Christendom, the Holy Mandilion, which was said to bear a mysterious imprint of Christ not made by human hands. And I believe that he would have entrusted his coin engraver with the responsibility of actually engraving as an accurate likeness as he can, and which was very fortunate for us because the engraver copied the lines that appear on the image as carefully as he possibly could. And bearing in mind he's working with a coin no bigger than a centimeter in diameter, was actually able to replicate the image. And it is startling. And when you hold up the coin image next to an image of the shroud, you see some phenomenal similarities, which could not be coincidental. I actually have two of these bronze follises in my collection now. Both of them are equally fascinating. That's the famous one. I hope if I zoom in and go in on that, hopefully you might just be able to catch the detail.
Yeah. I'm going to bring up a tab here too. I can probably find a zoom in. I can show.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's good. All right. And then I also have this one as well, which is fabulous in its own a different way. This was struck about 50 years later. Now again, I don't know how much detail you're able to see on that. I'm hoping you might be able to see some of it. And this one is incredible because, I mean, for example, it also contains a band around the throat, a horizontal band around the throat. And the artist, the coin engraver, has carefully replicated that as carefully as he could, and it corresponds perfectly with a band that we see around the face of the man on the shroud. Now that's, I just think that the chances of somebody doing that are just ridiculous, unless he was actually looking at something and modelling it. The fact that on both of these bronze follises, the eyes on the coin appear to be closed in exactly the same way as they appear on the Shroud of Turin. Even the positioning of the hair, slightly sort of two strands of hair. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think I can bring up the bronze one now. If I
good.
Share screen on this tab. I had it in a slide here. Where's the one? So this, if that shows up, is that showing up?
Yes, there we are. Well, that's good.
This is the bronze one, or that's the first one you showed, right?
That's the first one. Yes, that's the Emperor John Zimisces' first coin in 969 AD. So this is within 20 years of the image of Edessa coming to Constantinople. So here we have a coin that was actually struck in Constantinople, bearing the face of Christ. And I'm absolutely convinced that that the emperor would have wanted the most accurate likeness he could. And so the coin engraver has copied the lines that appear on the Mandilion as closely as possible, I think, to create this image. And you can actually see, and that's a great, and thank you for putting that up on the screen, because you can actually see there so many details. You can see at the bottom of the screen, you can see the two strands of hair that are going off in a parallel, exactly replicating the image that we see on the face of the shroud. You see this unusual cross shape, which has been sort of created from the eyebrows and the nose, again, exactly as we see on the shroud. Even the moustache, which is slightly sloping down to the left, you get to see that as well. The fact that the eyes appear to be closed as well. Again, this is all absolutely, for me, quite compelling evidence. I would struggle to suggest that somebody could have just replicated that by chance. And I think what this does is I think quite provides compelling evidence that the image of Edessa, the Mandylion, as we've known it, and the Shroud of Turin are one and the same. Because it is just too hard to believe that a mysterious image on fabric, not made by human hands, which is how the Mandylion and the cloth of Edessa were described. I think this is what we're looking at today. And I think what this little coin does very well is bridge this gap, this historical gap between the Mandylion and the Shroud of Turin, and show that they are one and the same, which is, I think, very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just close that up for a second. Then, the interesting thing to me here too with that is, you mentioned I've got the article now. This was, when was it? Well, the summer 2025 issue 101 from the British Turin Shroud Society's newsletter. And in there, I was going through the article here. It was neat because you mentioned at the end, so I hadn't heard. Well, a lot of the story was fascinating. I did get stuck on the whole, was it Justinian II who had his nose cut off? That was pretty horrible.
So the article is about the gold coin. So this is a little bit earlier than my little bronze follower. So this is before Constantinople have received the Mandylion. The Mandylion is still in Edessa, which is Muslim occupied. And Justinian II was the first Byzantine emperor who wanted Christ to appear on his gold coins. And again,
is that this one, Justin? I'm gonna put this up too. I think if it's the right one.
For me, yeah.
Is it? Because I think you shared this with me. Is it this one, or is that the?
Yes. Okay. So what we're looking at here is the first coin of Justinian's reign, in Justinian's first reign. And this is actually the first gold solidus. So this is a gold coin. Yes. This is the face of Christ, which again demonstrates some remarkable similarities between the image, the face that we have on the Shroud of Turin. So much so that I think that it seems quite clear that it was modelled from life, that it was modelled from something. This is not an artist's representation. There are some wonderful sort of detail that actually suggests that he's actually basing this image on something else. And of course, the hypothesis is that that the coin engraver would have travelled to Edessa and tried to create a lifelike image from the cloth. He's used a little bit more artistic license than the later engraver, in as much as he hasn't just copied the lines that appear. He's tried to sort of flesh out the face. He's tried to give it a little bit more detail. The eyes are obviously open, as do not appear on the shroud, but it's still a very recognizable, that the same long nose, the owl-like eyes, the beard, the strands of hair coming off the hair. This is all sort of quite indicative of something, I think, that has been based upon the image that we have on the shroud. Now, what is interesting about the coins of Justinian II is that he actually had two reigns, because his first reign was cut short, and it was actually cut short by a military coup, and he was deposed, and his nose was cut off, because apparently they believed that the Byzantine emperor had to be without any imperfection. So they thought, his enemies thought, that by cutting off his nose, it would prevent him from ever becoming emperor again. And I think what we see is sort of very interesting, because the coins of Justinian II's first reign are they obviously make an effort to recall them, melt them down, and strike them with images of the new emperor. So these are quite difficult to find. I mean, they're quite rare coins for that in that sense.
Mm.
Now, what was also happening at the same time, which again is very, very interesting, because close next to the Byzantine Empire, obviously you had Edessa being sort of Muslim controlled. We know that I'm looking for his name because I want to get it right. Yeah, so here we go. Caliph Abd al-Malik Ibn Marwan
Yes.
would actually then went and created his own gold coin, because they had used the gold solidus up until then, but obviously now that it depicted Christ, they didn't recognize Christ as being divine, and so they struck their own coin to actually and created the first Islamic gold dinar in AD 696. Again, same sort of size and scope as the solidus, but obviously as a reaction, I think, to this particular image being used. Now, what's interesting is that after the military coup, which ousted Justinian II, and his general Leontios becomes the Byzantine emperor, he has the indignity, as I said, of having his nose cut off. He also, Leontis, then fell victim to a military coup, which put Admiral Aspimar on the throne, and he reigned as Tiberius III. And meanwhile, Justinian mounts a spectacular political comeback. He actually has a prosthetic nose fitted, and he comes back. And after being restored as emperor, Justinian II obviously had his two predecessors immediately executed for their treachery and arranged for new coins to be struck. And again, he wanted Christ to appear on the coins. However, it's a very different image of Jesus that actually appears on his second coinage. And I think this is quite interesting, because it would suggest that in that time, his access to the Mandylion at Edessa may have been closed off. And there seems to be a very good reason for that, because they were now at war. The Arabs had actually taken advantage of the political instability in Constantinople to attack Byzantine territories in North Africa and Asia Minor. And so I think it's possible that the restored Emperor Justinian found access to the Mandylion shut off for him at this time, because the image of, and I don't know whether you have one there, but the image of Christ that appears on his second coin in his second reign is very different.
Give me a sec here, because I don't have a digital one of it, but I have.
Oh, don't worry. No, it's okay. Well, it basically shows a curly head. That's the one. Yeah, you can see a sort of
that way. There we go.
Yeah, a sort of a curly head Jesus with short curly hair, no beard.
Over here, right? Sorry,
that's the one.
It's this one. Yes. There we go.
Yes, the other one is Justinian II, looking very good and sporting his obviously now prosthetic nose.
His new nose, yes. Right. So you can see the contrast there between that and the previous picture of Jesus. It doesn't look anything the same.
No, indeed, and that's often called the Syrian image, after similar depictions have been found in the Eastern Mediterranean. But it is a very different image of Christ, which again and fascinated me, because you wonder, well, why would the emperor do that? And I think that the reason for it was access to the earlier image had now been lost. And so I think they had to sort of start again with something different.
Let me put this up here, Justin, because it's kind of related. I'm pulling from regular viewers of the show here, or some of the at least previous episodes on the Shroud have probably seen the presentation just kind of my personal presentation I put together from different things people have shared with me. And part of it that I go through is I'll go through like the where you see these earlier depictions sometimes of Jesus in these like very ancient depictions, but then after the discovery, this discovery of this Mandylion, you start to see, just in terms of the timeline, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, that's when you start to see this becoming the norm, right? This more like in all of these depictions, where all of them, to at least some degree, you can see similarities with the shape, the ratio of the eyes to the length of the nose, the hair. It is interesting that it just changes.
And these images of the bearded Christ, which began sort of in the 6th century, correspond with the rediscovery of the image at Edessa.
Right.
And I can see when this image was rediscovered, it had been obviously Edessans had known about it. It was a legend, but it had been hidden. And I know you know the story, but they were repairing the city wall following a flood, and it was discovered in a niche in the wall.
Right.
And they took it out and opened it up from its probably was being held in a jar. And when they unraveled it, they realized that they actually had this incredible image again, not made by human hands. And I'm sure it must have created quite a stir. And I can see sort of artists flocking to Edessa to copy the mysterious image not made by human hands.
Right.
And certainly this is where the defining image that we have of Christ emerges. I mean, prior to this, there was a lot of, Christ was depicted as clean shaven, curly haired, long haired with a beard. There was no consensus in how the image was formed. And then suddenly there is a consensus. And that never really goes away. I mean, Justinian's the second design of the clean shaven, curly haired Jesus is more or less one of the last times that we sort of see that, because Justinian, unfortunately, didn't have very long to enjoy his second reign. He was deposed yet again, and this time they were taking no chances. They had him executed. And of course, what we see is after that, we actually begin to see a crackdown on religious images, particularly on coins. There's a big debate. The image of Christ then didn't appear on a coin again for another 132 years. And there's this huge debate as to whether religious images or icons should be venerated. And there were lots of people arguing that they shouldn't be, and citing the Old Testament, sort of forbidding the creation of objects to worship. And Emperor Leo III banned all depictions of Christ in AD 726 and ordered their destruction, prosecuting anybody caught venerating them. And the situation wasn't resolved until the Second Council of Nicaea in AD 787. And they actually came to the conclusion that it was all right to venerate images. You couldn't worship them, but it was all right to have these holy images and venerate them. And the one thing I think that clinched it for the Council of Nicaea was the mysterious image of Christ that God had imprinted onto the Edessa cloth, because if God had done it, then obviously it had to be okay. So once again, we then see the sort of resurgence then in the image of Christ. But meanwhile, when that debate is settled and finalized, it's the image of Christ that we now know today, the bearded, the long hair, the bearded image that is now the absolute definitive image of Christ. And I think that came from the Mandylion. I mean, there seems to be no doubt in my mind at all that's where that image came from.
That's a little while later. I think it's 944, right? Or you might be getting to that. I'm sorry, for when the journey from the Mandylion to Constantinople. Yeah, because I have.
That's right. So what happened in 944? In exchange for 200 Muslim prisoners of war, the Byzantine army went to Edessa and they collected the image and they brought it back to Constantinople. It arrived in Constantinople on August the 15th, 944 AD. Great celebrations, great rejoicing. It was the most holy icon of its type. It's the most holy image. And it was a huge sort of coup for Constantinople to have it. Emperor Constantine VII personally inspected the cloth, and he described the image as being, quote, extremely faint, more like a moist secretion without pigment or the painter's art. And it was considered to be too holy to go on public display. But one dignitary who did see it was the Archdeacon of the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. And he preached a sermon, and he declared in that sermon that Christ had, quote, imprinted the reflection of his form on the linen. And later in 1130, a monk declared that the image bore, quote, the majestic form of his whole body, supernaturally transferred. So we see that this is the image. Oh yes, this is the image of Edessa that we see, and of course it's 20 years after. It's only 20 years after the image had come to Constantinople that the Emperor John Zimisces is arranging for his coins to be struck throughout the Byzantine Empire. empire with the face of Christ on it. And I think it's almost like a look what we've got. It's that kind of
that's the one that's
that's the one that you showed me. That's
right.
that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So and back where we began with it. Yeah. Well, and again, the superb detail there.
Yes.
You know, and like you said too, like this is a tiny, little 1 centimeter, like you showed, coin. But what I really like, and I've heard this before, this isn't my observation, but I point this out to people when I'm talking about it. This particular depiction of the arrival of Mandylion, I always find it so strange that it's like, that you have this, this depiction of like a real face.
Yes.
Popping off the cloth. And again, speculation, sure, but I mean, I think it's at least fair speculation that, like, why, if you're attempting to artistically depict that this isn't a normal picture,
or that
exactly. whatever this image is more lifelike than a painting, it seems to me like a neat way to do that.
Absolutely.
That it's a real face. Like, that's just really intriguing to me.
No, I completely agree, and I think it's the fact that they recognised right from the beginning that this was not a painting. This is not something that has been artistically placed on the shroud. This is something completely different again, and this is what we see today. And I think that's I find that more compelling than anything that the Mandylion and the shroud are the same object, because I think it's we know we can even see how after the sack of Constantinople in 1204, when the Crusader Knights came in and they took all of the things of value from Constantinople, and we're told that the shroud was one of them. The image of Edessa, it disappears, and it goes off to Athens, and then the Knights Templar have it, I think, for 100 odd years before it shows up finally in Liry in northern France, and begins making its way down to Turin, where of course it is today. So I mean, it's when you start to trace this incredible timeline, I think it becomes more and more compelling, and I think the evidence becomes more and more compelling. One of the things that I've been able to do recently, obviously working now with the British Shroud of Turin Society. Now we have a new website, which I would invite everybody to go and see, and in fact that would be fantastic. And it's it's very easy to remember. It's shroudofturin.uk. So what you've got to do is to remember to put .uk after the Shroud of Turin, and it'll take you straight there.
There we go.
And I've been looking at trying to sort of create a historical timeline of the shroud, which you can go and have a look at. And I think it's been absolutely fascinating to start tracing through and looking at some of this evidence that exists that shows that the shroud really does go all the way back to the 1st century. And there's some good solid sort of historical very, very interesting historical evidence. A lot of shroud skeptics will say that the shroud isn't specifically mentioned and isn't specifically referenced, and that's possibly true. But what we do have is evidence very, very early on that there was an image. There was something that had Christ, an image of Christ imprinted onto the linen in a way that was startling and very different, and obviously not a painting. And we can see that going right back. And I find that that's very interesting. I mean, that's there's plenty of.
And I've got everything linked below for folks. I'm doing my Vanna White thing here from Wheel of Fortune of like just kind of sort of showing. I think a lot of people will get that reference. My high school students don't get that reference, these days, sadly. But yeah, and you have like, and again, like a great springboard. It feels like for me for further research for people who are interested. That it's here to be able to, kind of find in short form. But then again, you've got these, like we just showed in a lot of the slides and such for people to be able to go and look at these up close. I think it's a great opportunity. And the Prey manuscript, I've done a whole thing on that before.
Oh, yeah.
I always come back to that because that's fascinating. But yeah, for people to see here, and let me ask you this, Justin, if it's fair to say this. I think I just gave a presentation a few weeks ago at our local Catholic diocese here, just for people, just basic kind of introduction stuff. And my focus was primarily on trying to help people, I think, think through and have a conversation about the nature of evidence versus the nature of proof, just the way we tend to use those terms. And I think we had a good kind of dialogue about I think there are a lot of people I run into online, some who might comment on this particular on this video, we'll see, who will say they'll bring up one thing, Bishop Darcy's letter,
Oh yeah,
they'll bring up a thing and say that proves that everything is not worth talking about, which to me, it's a sad way to just sort of, in American football terminology, to punt, and just whatever, we'll just move on to something more interesting, which is I find very unfortunate, because like you're like all of those things you have on that historical timeline there, I think it's fair to say that these are worthwhile pieces of evidence to consider.
I think so.
And this convergence or preponderance of evidence to look, more broadly at this.
I think you're right.
More or less likely. Something like
yes, and I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's what it's all about. It's about the weight of evidence, isn't it? I mean, I think people who still cling to the belief that the shroud is not the burial cloth of Christ are running out of evidence, if you like, to sort of support their position. I mean, they'll cite the carbon-14 testing, which we now know has been more or less comprehensively discredited in multiple reasons. They'll cite Bishop Darcy, who described the cloth as a cunningly painted forgery, when we know that it isn't a painting, because we've had a chance to examine it, and the Stirp team did that and were able to conclusively show that it is not a painting, it's not a work of an artist. And so it must get harder and harder for them to actually find solid evidence to sort of base their theory that it's not. And I want to challenge people who think that the shroud is a medieval fake, because as far as I can see, well, what exactly were they faking? If I was a medieval forger, and there was a big market in medieval forgeries, there's no doubt at all about that at the time. But if I was asked to fake the burial shroud of Jesus, I would go and find an old piece of linen, and I would cover it in whatever blood I could find, and that would have sufficed in the Middle Ages. Who would have been any the wiser? Why would I go to the time and trouble of creating a revolutionary new method of imprinting the cloth with the image, a perfect image of a crucified man, front and back, in such a way that even today we still can't replicate it with 21st century technology? I cannot get my head around an explanation for why any medieval forger would want to go to those sort of lengths. Why would they put pollen on the linen from plants that only grow in Israel? Why would they put dirt around the feet from limestone that matches the chemical signature of limestone found in Jerusalem?
Blood stains on first and then the image, which I don't know how anyone could do that.
could even try and do that. I mean, why
go doing that is the main.
I know. Why go to the trouble of finding human blood as well? But not only human blood, but also human blood from a man who had undergone extreme torture and pain. Why add blood flows to the arms that allow forensic scientists to determine exactly how the arms were suspended above the head, and even to calculate their last position before death? Why sew the winding sheet cut from the cloth back onto the linen using a special stitch that has only ever been seen once before in the Jewish city of Masada in the 1st century? Why include
or scourge marks that align
match the Roman flag?
Whip arcs of 2 different height soldiers on either side.
Perfectly matching what we know of the Roman flagram. Why include details in the image that would only become visible with the introduction of photography at the end of the 19th century? And all of these things, and as you said, I think
to see the other
that's right,
around the blood, the wounds,
and I think it's almost whenever I see sort of Shroud of Turin proven to be a hoax, I'm like, oh really, how interesting. And my first question is, so how did the medieval forger fake it? And of course that's the one question they can't answer, because we still and I think that it is all about the balance of evidence, isn't it? I mean, when you are looking at something like this, you have to weigh up, I think, all of the evidence. And for me, it's stacking up. I mean, you have the evidence for the authenticity of the shroud up here, and then you have the evidence that suggests that it isn't, quite a way down there. And I think that's and a lot of the planks that the skeptics use to say, well, it must be a fake because ... are now sort of under threat themselves, because people saying, for example, that the shroud must be a fake because we don't have a historical record of it until it comes into the possession of the Ducharme family. Well, that's not true. We can see, looking back, we've got a lot of evidence that actually shows that this cloth was very much a part of early Christianity, and going right back to the first century. And I think that in itself is fascinating. And then when you add to that then all of the weight of scientific evidence and all the new research that's being done to actually show that the shroud is first century, I think you have the carbon-14 testing has some serious questions to answer. I really do.
Sure. Oh, Justin, this is all great as always, and I'm excited for folks to kind of dig in more, to check out the website. Of course, we're gonna have to kind of bring it to a close for now here, but definitely keep in touch with you, have you back on, I'm sure, in the future. Anything else that people should check out, or just anything you're working on next you're digging into or going deeper into?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, being interested in coins, I mean, there are some fascinating studies. I mean, we've got the British Shroud of Turin Society is celebrating its 50th anniversary next year.
That's right.
And we're going to have a special jubilee in the UK. More details, obviously, to sort of follow. So check the website and get all the details about that. There are going to be some fantastic speakers. We're hoping that Ian Wilson will be one of them. He'll be making one of his very rare visits to the UK, and that will be absolutely fantastic. I mean, there are some really interesting sort of research. I've been looking at one of my new acquisitions is an absolutely tiny Anglo-Saxon Seat, a little gold Anglo-Saxon Seat. I'm going to hold it up now. I will not do justice to it. I don't know if you can make out this little image of a bearded man there. Well, I believe this is Christ. This is dating from the 6th century. It's the date. Let me just confirm. So it was actually struck in the southeast of England around 680 AD. Found in a Viking settlement, and the reason why I think it's really, really interesting is that the image is quite stylized, but it appears to show obviously Christ, but also the bearded man rather, and the image replicates very closely images of the Veronica, the veil. This idea that it was kept in a sort of a trellis with a sort of a cutout,
right.
And the way that the beard has been stylized on that little tiny coin suggests that this is something that they've been looking at, and we think the shroud would have been kept like that for some time and displayed like that for some time, and obviously copies were made of it, and then when the actual Odessa disappeared, then obviously they became known as the Veronica. Veronica being, of course, I think it doesn't actually appear, the word Veronica and the name Veronica doesn't appear until then, and I think it's possibly the Latin is a vera icon, true icon, and that's where we get the word from. But I think it's so that's a line of study which I'm looking into at the moment. But it's it's all good stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you as always so much, Justin. Really appreciate sharing your time and your knowledge and wisdom with us. And
no.
God bless your work in the future.
Well, thank you very much, and a pleasure, real pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, take care.
You too. Take care.
Always a really wonderful part of my day, that's to be sure. Whenever I can chat with Justin and kind of consider some of these things, these mysteries, it's really insightful, really kind of cool thing that I'm able to partake in. So I really love these conversations. I love the website too. You get to see it there a little bit. So check out shroudofturin.uk. Again, it's a great launching pad as a place to start. And if you're somewhat familiar with the shroud, but you want to go deeper, you want to really dig in, you don't really know how to kind of, where should I start? How do I dive into some of these important sub considerations, or like the history of it, or sort of some of the scientific research? It's a great place to do just that over at shroudofturin.uk. So thank you guys so much for stopping by today. Share this far and wide, and until next time, don't forget to wonder. Take care.